Hi guys, welcome back. So this week we have a very special guest. My mom is joining me. Meliana's on spring break, so I'm really excited to introduce to you guys my mom. Her name is Nicole.
Hi, guys.
So I invited her on to share her testimony because she has just like a really, really cool testimony, and it's just so different from me and Meliana's, and I just think it's really, really important for you guys to hear it. But I know we always start with a fun question, so we're still gonna do that. So, Mom, what's your most embarrassing church moment?
So I would probably have to say when our now 17-year-old was about a year and a half or so, we were at a church speaking, like we were on deputation, raising support, and we were like in the second row from the front. And my husband went up to go preach, and Serena had diarrhea in her diaper and it squirted out the side onto my skirt. And then I stood up and it slipped off onto the floor. And then I had to cover it with a bulletin and it was flying in the breeze of the fan. And then I went and left to go clean it up. And then when I came back near the end of the church service, I had done my best, but no one would talk to me, probably because I smelled like poop.
I actually have like this vivid memory of like going to lift up the bulletin and then you being like, no, don't do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so embarrassing.
So funny though. I think for me, like I remember I think I was like I had to have been like 11 or something, and we were playing a game in like the youth room, and I like somehow stepped on my foot or something. I don't know what happened, but I ripped my own toenail off. And I didn't even know, and someone was like, Maddie, there's blood all over the floor. And I was like, what? And they were like, it's coming from your toe. So yeah, that was kind of embarrassing. And there was like a guy there that at the time I was like, oh, like he's so amazing. So yeah, that was quite a time.
Yes.
But anyways, jumping into the good stuff. So if you want to just share a little bit about like yourself and your testimony, yeah, go for it, Mom.
Sure. Thank you, Maddie, first of all, for having me on your podcast. I appreciate this opportunity. So, I did not grow up in a Christian home. Very early, I was sexually abused, and eventually, my brother and I were removed from our home, taken out of school, and brought to a foster home. I was there for about a year and a half, and then my brother got to leave early. And so I went back right before the summer before third grade, but I went through a lot of counseling, like family counseling, counseling myself, and then sent back home, and I really didn't want to be there. I remember crying in my bed, but it was this amazing place that we were living at the time, and I got the opportunity to be a child, like playing outside, and so going forward from there, I did really well in school, but I had a lot of anger problems. I would break things, have outbursts at home, not at school or anything. And then as I got older, I started to make more poor decisions as I was older and discovered there were other things to life than just school to kind of fill that void. I started to do really bad in school my freshman year of high school and was starting to fail a bunch of classes. And we lived behind this Christian school at the time, and I would make fun of the kids that were there. We went to church once in a while because a Baptist pastor had come and knocked on our door and had invited us to come. We would go, but nothing was different in our house. It was just, still the same. We'd go to church and then come home and things were just, the same. So it was just, whatever, mocking and things. And so, but I kind of got desperate and saw it as an opportunity for another school. I think God was just pointing that way. Really thankful that there are Christian schools. And so I visited and then I got to attend. But it was definitely a culture shock. I did not feel like I fit in. I got in trouble for my clothes and I didn't know the right words to say, and I would use words that I shouldn't be using. But I did make some friends and some really good friends who really changed my life, that God really used them, their families. They allowed me to be a part of their homes. They would invite me over. They would take me to their churches, to youth group. They would allow me to spend the night, ask questions. Some of my friends' parents spent a lot of time answering questions that I had because this was just a whole new world to me. I had no idea that there was Christian music and Christian books and that you could just talk to God like casually in your head all day, that there was like retreats, just all this Christian stuff. This whole world opened up. I had no idea even existed. So I was invited to retreats. Some of my friends, well, most of my friends, their churches would have retreats, but some of the close ones, I would go along. There was scholarships available usually, so was able to attend. And I learned about a lot of different topics that I wouldn't have otherwise learned about. They were just so foreign to me, though, like about purity, how you should save your heart for your husband, not just like don't have sex before marriage because you don't want to have a baby. But God really, really worked through these families, allowing me to see how their homes were real and different, and how they prayed for all these different things that were just part of their everyday life. And it really made a difference. Like they were so real. And just like them living out their basic faithfulness every day was just a huge testimony to me. I've talked to some of them since, and I don't think they realized at the time like what a difference it made. So I at the time didn't want to get married, didn't want to have kids. I just knew broken homes and marriages that I wanted nothing, never wanted to have a marriage like any marriage that I knew. So I was just like, nope, I am never getting married. I am never having kids. But during this time that I started at the school, we also started going to a church that was a new church. The pastor had come by and we were starting to go there and be a little bit involved. But ultimately, that pastor and his wife played a huge role in my life as well, as I got saved. And my life started to slowly change, and I was seeking out counsel and advice and guidance. Some of that was really difficult being in a Christian school where everyone, like a lot of kids, were in Christian families and they just had these rules already set for them and what they were allowed to do and should and shouldn't be doing. Because I was so vastly different on the outside, and as God slowly started to change my heart, then things changed from the inside out. Like when I was convicted of being more modest, like my family couldn't just go out and buy all new clothes for me. And I was just felt like a little bit ashamed or a little bit, I don't know. But I had a friend that just reminded me that God looks at our heart, that man looks on the outside and God looks at our heart, and that my heart is what mattered most. And that same friend would also write me letters as I was starting to change and starting to respond to God's word about relationships or whatever was going on in my life. And just, she'd bring in Bible verses and just love me, but tell me what I was doing was wrong, but just love me through all of that. And I had several friends, I'm so thankful, that were like that, that just loved me while I was changing and growing, and it just gave me a chance. Didn't just like write me off like, oh, that girl's like this or whatever, or just judge me. That they just gave me an opportunity to become part of their world and for Christ to do the work and change me slowly from the inside out. So the same year that I got saved, I attended a youth service at a youth group that I went to often with one of my friends. The youth pastor that night he had decided last minute that he was going to change what he was speaking about. He said that he felt like God wanted him to talk about something else that someone needed to hear. And he decided to talk about how God doesn't just want all these, corners of your life that you refuse to give to him, but he wants all the parts of our lives that we hold back, including our pain. And so that friend, she knew all about the experiences that I had, like the abuse as a child and lots of other decisions that I made along the way afterwards, trying to like medicate myself or, fill that void that I had in my life and trying to, change everything myself and the shame. And so my cousin who had moved back at the time and her and I went up to the altar and prayed a lot that night about forgiveness and giving over that pain. And so for me, that's really huge, hugely invaluable that that there is someone at all who loves loves me, knows every single part of me, and at that time knew all the decisions that I had made, all the things that I had been through, and loved me. That he was like my rescuer. That knowing all the dark and horrible things that had happened or decisions that I had made, that he would clean me and love me, and that I was just never too much for him. I don't know how other people survive going through abuse or all the different things that can happen without Christ. Having counseling was definitely necessary and definitely helps and is a part of the process. But having Christ is essential. So God continued to grow me and to change me until the person that I became was not anyone that you would recognize. People would, it's like, oh, I can't believe you would, wear like that before or whatever. So I met and married an amazing man that I am still married to, Maddie's dad. We have been married, it'll be 24 years this year. We did get married young. That's it for another day, all of that story. But he has a wonderful, godly family that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know families like that existed. I met him and we were talking at work one day and I would ask him about his family and I just couldn't even believe it. Like, what? Is that real? Like, really? Like, your mom plays the piano and you guys sing hymns and you have devotions every night? Like, that's real? Like, okay. And then, all these other different things. So we joke that I married him for his family because they're just really amazing. They are, and I'm so thankful for them.
Yeah.
But we were able then to work with teens at our church for a while. We have 4 daughters now, from 6 to 21, and 1 loss. And we were able to work with the teens after we got married and do youth groups. And I was able to, we would do events and share my testimony and do Bible studies. And when he pastored, was able to do ladies' Bible studies and share things. And then maybe, I don't know how many years ago at this point now, not that many, but I encountered some significant grief in my life that I needed to go get counseling for. And so with working through that, I dove back into dealing with the childhood trauma, and to some of the things that I couldn't communicate or just didn't talk about, out of fear or out of hope that if I ignored them or pretended they didn't happen, that like I could push them down enough and like they didn't really happen. I'm sure anyone who's had that happen knows exactly what that's like, but that it doesn't work, it doesn't go away. So going through the trauma therapy was definitely one of the hardest things I think that I've had to do, looking at everything as an adult with enough space in between, and looking at it for what it was, breaking it all down, working through the effects of it in my life, all of the people pleasing and the misplaced guilt and all these things that had been a struggle for years into my adult life. I'm trying to make sense of this new reality, like looking at my life as a whole and what I had experienced, and trying to understand the decisions of other people, and their part in this. It was definitely really difficult to look at all and to process. And without going too much into that, I definitely went into like a very dark place at times. I never like blamed God or was like, why did this happen to me, God? Because I've seen how God can use this stuff. And I feel like it's really, really important having the ability to be able to relate and share and talk to other girls and women. But he's the only one who's ever been, consistent and true and always loving, and the rescuer, like in my story. But I just wanted him at times to just bring me home. I didn't want to do this anymore. And so I was able to work through a lot of those dark days. God brought me through that. And I had to be really transparent and super open and talk to my husband. Now, definite disclaimer, if someone is really struggling with that, it's really important for you to talk to a professional, not just rely on saying, oh, I should go. This is in no way specific to what you should be doing. I'm not, licensed in anything, but a professional is definitely the way to go.
Mm.
So, but I would be very transparent with my husband where I was at and where it was going on, when I was really struggling, when I was spiraling. And so I was able to make decisions to remove people. God just gave me strength. There's just a lot of things that changed, and removed things and people from my life, not giving everyone access to your life. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation all the time. It doesn't also always mean that everyone gets to be a part of your life and gets to have full access to all the things of your life. That's just not how it works. And I'm still doing a lot of the ongoing with the boundaries and working through different resources for my body, for my mind, spiritually, of course. But those are really important when you've gone through different things like sexual abuse and things. It's not just, limited to one thing. And I would encourage anyone who hasn't talked to anyone or who still needs to talk to someone to get help professionally, talk to someone. There is real freedom. That's something that's really huge that I've been able to experience. This, I didn't know that there was like this extra level. Like I always felt like God has really blessed me and allowed me to be able to process this and to be able to share this. I've always been really open about what has happened to me and trying to be able to use it for God and for good ways for Him, and to help other people. But that there's this like next level freedom from all of these shackles of shame and guilt and all these other things that I just didn't even really realize were holding me back until they were gone. The support is really, really crucial. Having support is really vital in this process, but knowing Christ as your Lord and Savior and having a real relationship with Him is like the most important part of the foundation there. But facing it like head on, is way harder than I think than just like stuffing it down. And there's been times where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is so horrible. This is so much worse. Can I just like go back to just pretending everything's fine and just having like all these emotional whatever? But I definitely felt like during the process, I struggled a lot with feeling like there was the proper resources for like a Christian women who have gone through sexual abuse, and are like now adult women who are healthy, who have been through it, and like giving resources and how did they make it through, like how did they get through these hard times when they were working through the process or coming out of foster care and the impacts of that on your later life. And so I just wish there was like a step by step. I know that's not even how it would work because it's different. Everyone has different experiences and different things that they're going to struggle with. But unfortunately, the effects also important that they don't just go away, that there's things that I'll live with forever. There's a lot of things that God can, take away and I can be free from, but there are just some things that just are there, and I have to learn how to manage and work through on a constant basis. So, yeah, I think that I'm incredibly blessed to have had the opportunity to go through the different counseling that I have gone through and to have the Lord and have such a supportive family at this point. And yeah, do you have any questions or things?
I do have a couple of questions. But first of all, thank you for sharing and being so open and vulnerable. And anybody who is listening who has experienced any kind of sexual abuse or anything, if you haven't told somebody, please do tell somebody, a trusted somebody. And if you don't know Jesus, I mean, I feel like you touched a lot on it, Mom, but like, he is the most important relationship that you could possibly ever have in your entire life.
Yes.
But yeah. So I feel like something that we talk about a lot is our relation, like how we grew up is so different. And so I guess I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit more about um growing up in not a Christian home, how then raising kids in a Christian home, like how was that different for you? Like did like was there, I'm sure there was struggles and things, but what would you say is like kind of like some of your big key like moments or like takeaways from that, like struggles?
Well, I feel like there's definitely so a benefit is that Maddie's dad did grow up in a Christian home, so we're a great balance as parents because sometimes I'll be one of the biggest struggles is because I experienced so many things. To me, some things are like a no-brainer. They're why would you want to experience this? Why would you want to go out and be involved in this with so much pain? You have this like I had a friend that this was also an issue for us. Like I felt like she just had things handed to her on a silver platter. Like it's easy. You have like this wonderful protection or whatever you want to call it. And I would definitely get frustrated sometimes. Now we're still raising girls, so I'm sure there's going to be many more things. But I do think that feeling like things are just foolish behavior and just being frustrated and angry and unable to really relate at how my kids would feel in a certain situation because I just feel like angry about it and annoyed that they would even want to because it seems like a no-brainer. Like, why would you choose that? Why would you do that? Like, you've said this or you've said that and you've seen this or that. Why would you choose that? Also, I think it's just sometimes scary being aware of what it could be, like what could be different
Mm-hmm.
for your kids. And then I think the balance of how much do you expose them to make sure that they can make their own educated decisions. Like I think it's really important for we've always thought it was really important for our girls to not just be like insulated but or isolated but to be like more insulated, that they would have examples of, you know, you don't want to be involved in this if you can see what the, like an outcome is or have a real life example or see different things for themselves. But obviously you don't want to like scare your kids or you don't want to like put them in front of things that it's because it should never be a fear thing. It shouldn't be like,
Mm-hmm.
do you see how scary this is or how terrible this is? Don't do this.
Yeah.
But a balance in reality.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel like? So I remember like the first time when you told me that you were like, I never wanted to like get married or like have kids. And I was like, what is that like? Because I've just like always been like so like, oh, I'm gonna get married and have kids. Like even when like I was little, like we found a video the other day and I was talking about like my husband and like my kids and I was like, what, like two or something? But
Like three.
how do you feel like that perspective kind of shifted when you met dad? Because obviously it had to be like a super special guy. So kind of like, I guess speaking to like how you knew that dad was the guy, but also like how that changed.
So definitely Jesus alone is the one that changed that. I did not, I think it comes from, I think everyone wants to be known and loved by another human, right? And I think that comes
Mhm.
from us having this also deeper desire for Christ, right? But I think we want this love story, and you see all these things, all these different places, right? It's not like it's like hidden away that there's an idea of like a love, this amazing love story. But I think I had seen so many, I'd never seen a happy ending at all, and I had not seen. I had not. I had made a lot of bad decisions and had a lot of really bad experiences that I was like, we have to like cut this off and like fix this somehow, and protect myself. And so I think like Christ
Mhm.
restoring and changing my view on marriage, seeing other people. My pastor at the time and his wife, they have a great marriage. I had some friends that had very real, like they weren't perfect, but they had good marriages, and
Mhm.
them talking to me about some of that stuff made a big difference. So like God lined it up just so like I was learning all this stuff and changing, and then I met my husband now. Like when I was in my senior year of high school, he like moved into the area, and I was like, yeah, there's no guys. It's gonna be so great. And then my friend was like, oh yeah, but this guy's moving to town. I was like, oh, okay, fine. And and then just like spending time with him because we ended up working at the same place because I needed a job that year so that I could continue to pay for school for my high school. And so yeah, that he was just so different from any guy I'd ever met. Like he had this wholesome family, and like he wasn't perfect, and he's has his own story. He's not a perfect guy. He grew up in a Christian home, but that doesn't mean that he was just this perfect guy. He was not, but he was just so different in so many different ways. And I think his contrast with every guy I'd ever met was such a huge deal. And then I just tried so hard for him to not be the guy and prayed so much about different decisions. And I had decided during my senior year that I just really wanted like a fresh start completely physically. And I was like, I'm not even going to kiss another guy until I get married. And he was like, and then I didn't want to date anyone either. And he was just like, what are you going to do? Just like have your best friend like ask you to marry them? And I was like, I don't know. I don't have it figured out yet. But like, I'm not going to do this traditional dating thing anymore because it does not work out well for me. It's like really bad. It's a train wreck. So much temptation. And so, yes. And then like I would have these different boundaries that I would come up with. We were just friends. We spent time together because we were teaching swim lessons together. And then we decided to do ballroom dancing lessons. And well, I wanted to do them and he agreed to do them with me. And then we were just friends, and I would just put up all these boundaries and have all these different things that were like, well, no, what about this? And like, I'm going to tell him this, and I'm sure he's going to just be like, yeah, I don't really want to mess with this girl anymore. Like, why bother talking to her? But it just never happened. Like over and over, and I'd be so nervous. We're gonna like go meet at this coffee shop, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to tell him, you know, this is what I want to do with my life, and he's gonna just and just over and over and over and over and over and continuing to pray about it. And like all the people in my life that were anyone that their advice would matter, like everyone was just more on board with it than I was. Not that I wasn't on board with it, I was just kind of like just keeping myself like locked up, like, no, you need to keep yourself under control. And then I remember my pastor's wife, I was supposed to go with him to a wedding, and I said I would go, and I was like, no, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. Like, nope. And I was like, he was going to leave, and I was like hysterical crying, and she was like, I don't understand. Like, why? She's basically was like, why are you doing this to yourself? And so eventually I had to give in and just be like, I'm going to take a leap and it's going to be okay. And everyone was on board with it. There was no one was like, don't do it. And I think that all of that together, I guess, is really what you could say. I remember one time I said like, well, I could marry him or I could like marry someone else and they'll die and then I'll marry him. And they're like, why would you just not just marry him and skip that other part? And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So ridiculous.
It is so
Men girls are so
ridiculous.
silly.
Oh yeah. How do you feel like so you grew up with just brothers and then you had all daughters? And how do you feel like
Surprise.
yeah, I know, right? And everyone's always like, you're gonna have a boy, and it's always like, well, it's just girls that are coming out, so I don't I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember dad being like one time like, well, it's just easier to have girls at this point. But
Yes.
how do you feel like was that a challenge for you? Do you feel like that was kind of like is are there anything that any like sort of lessons that you were like, okay, wow, like I was prepared for this or I wasn't prepared for this, like going into it?
Yes. So, okay, having brothers, like you just physically fight. Like I have one brother that is, we're Irish twins. I was born in January, he was born in October. So we were really close in age and we'd physically fight a lot growing up. And there'd be a lot of words too. And then the other one is almost 8 years younger than me and he has a heart condition. So we didn't really fight him. It's kind of messed up. But girls are so nasty and so bickering and they never stop. Oh my goodness. So I was definitely not prepared for that. And how emotionally roped in I would get to these conversations and things. Now, Maddie is, I'm going to throw you under the bus here for a second. She has been our most dramatic child and our first one, so not prepared. And then, but I love her to death and it's so worth it. And definitely, I feel like because I was so passionate as like an older teen, like in my 20s, like very passionate about talking to young girls about purity and about modesty and about all these different things. I felt excited about that part that like I'm gonna have my own daughters. It's gonna be the best ministry to have my own daughters and all their friends. It's not exactly worked out that way, but it is really exciting to have daughters and to be able to do all the girl stuff that I didn't really ever didn't have sisters, and I only have a very few girl cousins, and none of them lived near me until like the very like for one of them lived near me for like a year, and so that has been really amazing and really fun, and I'm sure as they get even older, it'll be more fun. But yeah, definitely the emotions, and I another huge thing is I did not have my emotions in check. I feel like as well as I thought that I did until and then
Mm,
having daughters and having to teach them how to manage their emotions, thinking like, wow, I don't even have this under control. How am I supposed to teach another human from the beginning how to do this? So that's definitely hard.
what do you feel like you would tell your younger self now, knowing all the things that you know and going through all the things you've gone through?
That is a really good question. The one thing I think I always wish I knew Christ sooner.
Mm.
I feel like there's a lot of painful things and painful decisions that I made on my own that if I had known Christ, I wouldn't have made. Just like searching and looking for Him and trying to fill a void, that if I had a relationship with Him sooner, that would be. But I don't know what I would tell myself.
I guess another way that I could ask is because I feel like that did kind of answer my question. Um, but as like a young mom, because you became a mom when you were younger than I am now, when you were 20, do
Yeah,
you
right before I
feel
turned 21.
like Um, that's so crazy to think about. Wow.
Hmm.
But do you feel like you regret any of the decisions that you made, like getting married so young or having kids so young?
Definitely not. I would definitely do that again. Getting married young was the best. Um, I guess I couldn't. I was thinking I want to have the most years I can with this guy, like even still, and I couldn't have gotten married any younger legally. So, but and we started having children because of having endometriosis, and then after surgery for that, and then PCOS. They told me the longer I waited, the less likely I would be to have children. So we were like, okay, well, let's get this party started, and we still just have four. And I think you handle motherhood so different at different ages because our kids are so far apart. I feel like I had Maddie, I was almost 21, and then Serena was like 3.5 years later, and then Ella, I was just before I turned 30, and then Olivia, I was 35. So it's so different, all the different phases and the pluses and minuses of having kids at each age. But definitely don't regret it. Sometimes now I'm like, what was I thinking? I'm gonna have a teenager girl in the house forever. Like they should have just been coming out one after another, so I could have just gotten this over with, and I would have not been so tired. Now that when you're older, like there's like much. It's definitely harder to recover from sleep at 35 than when you're 21. So,
Yes.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely no
Um,
regrets.
and what was it like for you, like being that age and then all of your friends were like in college or like hadn't even met their husband yet? Like I know that you had like one friend at church and like your sister-in-laws, but how is that like part of your life? Like talk a little bit about
That
that.
was, yeah, that was really challenging because I felt like all my friends, like Maddie said, they're all in college. And I was married and doing stuff with the youth group. And so my life was just foreign to them, so completely different. It was hard to relate to different things. We would still get together and I'd bring Maddie along and she'd be so cute and we'd go have, get food when they were home and things like that. But it was very lonely. I definitely really struggled a little bit postpartum with Maddie, but not terrible compared to like after Serena, but then I was prepared for it. But it was definitely a lonely time. I think I had some older ladies in my church that would come over and try to like be there for me. Stuff was not, there wasn't like as many like, small groups and moms things and stuff. I feel like if I was friends with or knew a young mom in my situation, then I probably would have tried to get her to go out and meet other, even if they're older moms that had similar beliefs or standards or life goals as her, so that she could just have more people to relate to. Thankfully, my one sister-in-law had gotten married around the same time we had, and then they had a daughter around the same time that Maddie was born. So we had like things that were in common. So I wasn't completely by myself, but that was, yeah, definitely more challenging than I think now. I have friends that are just having babies in the last 5 years or have no babies at all still, and so definitely a different life path.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, that was definitely always really cool for me, like having cousins that were like the same age, and like all of our moms were like so young. Um, but it's so funny, like looking back now and thinking like, oh my goodness, like you were like my age and like had a little baby and like yeah, and just I was just putzing around with my cousins. Um, but what would you like as so you have like something I just really admire about you is kind of switching gears, but as you're just always so like motivated and you always want to like be better, do better, and you never want to stop growing and learning. What do you feel like has been the biggest kind of driver behind that?
That is a great question. Probably, if I'm completely honest, is a very critical inner voice that does not want to be like my family growing up. Like I always, I think a lot of times just wanted to be different. I'm not going to be like them. I'm going to be better than this. I'm better than this. I'm not going to be like this. And then I think we moved a lot when I was growing up. So I had to learn to adapt and change and figure out new situations. How do I be successful here? That might sound silly, but if you're going to make friends and you move a lot, you have to figure out how can I do this? And how can I, switch academic programs like 3 times in 1 year, 2 times in my life? How are you going to be able to continue to be successful? And it was just never an option to fail. I just was always like, there's an option to be better. I can change. I can be better. So I'm not really sure beyond that inside voice that I'm always telling myself things. Christ made me this way. I don't know.
Yeah. What would you say is like the biggest lesson that you're learning right now?
Right now, I feel like the biggest thing I'm learning is how to set better boundaries around things that I feel that I should do and things that I really can do. Being honest with myself and figuring out how to navigate all of that.
Mhm.
There's a lot of personal things going on that can easily overtake time, and just trying to reorganize and figure out how all these different things, like the choices that I make with boundaries, and how it impacts my future and the the goals and the outcomes that I want, and just trying to figure all of that out. And then also that I'm the problem in a lot of my scheduling things. I'm learning
I
that. I'm
think
like,
that's
oh,
probably
okay.
where I yeah, where I get the overscheduling myself from. I just like to be
Yeah.
busy.
Like, I have a new change and it's still the same. And the only common denominator is me.
I guess the last question that I have for you is what advice would you give to like young girls who have um either like become new to the faith or have had a similar um backstory to you? Like what's the biggest piece of advice you feel like you could give them?
It's a good question. Well, I feel like it's two different things. Like if they're just new to their faith,
Mhm.
I would say dive in, find someone who you can talk to and be mentored, and find materials that you're enjoying that you can continue to grow. But if they have a similar backstory, I mean, obviously the same, those are really important things, but that it doesn't limit them, it doesn't make them damaged. But I do feel like even if they don't have a similar backstory, there's so many girls that, have experiences and things that they still feel like, well, I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, I'm already damaged, or I'm already broken, or I'm already fill in the blank, or I'm not fill in the blank. that it's not true, and to not listen to the lies that Satan has, and to find, again, materials and someone that will pour into you and help you to grow, and that is going to like support you and encourage you,
Yeah.
because you're worth
And
it.
I mean,
He thinks so.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And I mean that all starts with like getting plugged into like your local church, and sometimes it's scary, but you have to like be bold and like ask someone, and like someone that is the next life stage or a couple life stages ahead of you, that's where you want to be. Um is a really great place to start. But that's all the time we have for today, guys. Um, Thanks so much, Mom, for chatting and sharing your testimony. Maybe we'll have you back again sometime. Be pretty fun
You're
with
welcome.
both of us. Yeah. All right. I love you guys, and I will talk to y'all later.